Exception, Blacklisted podcast.
Welcome, guys. We are here with Christa from Align Athletics / Thrive CrossFit. How you doing?
Good. How about you guys?
Sore from Dave and Buster's. Are you sore?
I don't think I played enough to be sore.
Oh, what games did you guys play?
Kung Fu Panda?
Kung Fu Panda.
Did you guys cheat?
Yeah.
Duh. Dave and Buster's also underlined, this is where you cheat. This is what it says.
Wait, did you guys win the 1,000 tickets?
No, we
We
were
did.
3 less.
Not us, but I did.
Later that night?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I just
damn.
had Mitchell and Dan come play, and we started just balling. I told you.
Oh, so I sucked.
No, it's not. Just you have to hit them. You have to hit them fast enough for you to keep getting more spawned in things.
Oh, okay. So I sucked.
Sorry, we played twice and we're 3 under the minimum to get the jackpot.
That's what happened with us.
Yeah.
We were 3 under.
I'm surprised you didn't hear Lexi screaming.
Yeah, I did. That does not shock me that she would do that on that game. That's funny. Well, yeah. I guess you coach for us. You write our gymnastics program, and we hired you on and asked you to write that for kind of some specific reasons. And why don't you just kind of like give us a background of your training history, like your athletic history and stuff like that, and we'll kind of like wrap into why we hired you on for all that stuff. So,
Okay. So I started gymnastics as a child. I think I was 7 or 8. Competed until I was 13. And then did literally nothing. I didn't know any other sports. So I finally found CrossFit 10 years later. So that is when I started CrossFit. And right around that time, I had also started coaching gymnastics because I was in college. So I think I've been coaching for like 4 years. Prior to finding CrossFit.
wait, after finding CrossFit?
Prior.
Oh, okay. So like 19, you started coaching while you were in college, and then 23, you found CrossFit.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then started coaching CrossFit myself because I wanted to help the gymnastics side of things. Nobody at my gym knew.
Wait, what time frame was this that you started getting into CrossFit? Like what year?
2012.
Oh, so people were really moving like ass.
Nice.
Yeah, and long enough ago, there was no like social media to be able to just find quick videos. Obviously YouTube, but
Yeah.
there was not a lot on there.
Yeah.
So the coaches at my gym didn't really know how to coach the gymnastics side and even just a simple handstand. And so I asked if I could start coaching some gymnastics there, and that's how I got my L1.
Okay. Got it. So, sorry, I didn't mean to caveat there. So you started coaching gymnastics at the gym, and was it like just specifically gymnastics, or you were coaching classes and everything?
So it was a gymnastics only gym, but I was being trained to coach classes, our pre-team and our competitive team.
Oh, okay. Sorry, this was at the.
Sorry, are you talking about gymnastics gym or CrossFit gym?
Yeah, sorry. So you coach at 2 different gyms.
Yes.
You coach at a gymnastics gym and a CrossFit gym, and then you started kind of like helping out on the gymnastics side of things at the CrossFit gym, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, how long after that did that happen? Like after you started CrossFit?
A handful of years. I'd been doing CrossFit for at least 2 years, 3 years, I think, before I really started helping a bunch.
Okay.
It was more, I got to a point where I realized I needed more assistance, so I started looking into more within the gymnastics side
Okay.
and started trying to apply that to members in the gym.
Okay. So what do you mean by that exactly?
We had a bunch of male coaches, and most guys can just walk in a CrossFit gym and figure stuff out. It doesn't always work for the females. We need a little more technique since we don't have the same strength
Okay.
abilities. So I got kind of frustrated that nobody knew how to coach me.
Got it.
Since I felt like with my body awareness, it should come somewhat naturally.
Yeah.
So I started trying to reach out to other people, trying to find programming and stuff that I could be doing. And once I found that and figured out what that looked like in the CrossFit world, I started trying to help apply that to our members.
Okay. Yeah. So can you dive into a little bit more of like what you mean by girls and guys need to be coached different?
Aside from the confidence aspect of it, because that's also thrown in there, most guys that have played sports come in athletic, right? Like y'all have strong upper bodies. So figuring out strict handstand push-ups, stuff on the rings, not as challenging to most guys as to most females. Most females come in wanting to get their first pull-up. I, being a gymnast, I'd never been on the rings. That's a guy sport.
Right.
Girls don't touch them. And then I couldn't do handstand push-ups because our goal is to always have our arms straight, not purposefully bending them. So
What is this?
that technique side definitely is more important. I shouldn't say more important, but to get girls the skill the first time, we have to rely on a lot more technique.
Okay. Yeah. So you feel it's easier to develop the technique of those movements than it is to develop the strength of those movements? Or do you see that girls are strong enough and they just need the technique?
I think they go hand in hand.
Okay.
I think guys come in strong and need just the technique most of the time, whereas girls need both hand in hand.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. And so, like, what were some of the things that you were finding as you started to kind of like investigate that route, like skill wise?
What do you mean? Go deeper with that?
So like you, sorry. So like, what were some of the focus points that you needed to focus on? Like, was it specific body weight, or sorry, specific areas of the body that were weak that you needed to strengthen? Like when you started to kind of like learn more about the skill and strength side of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like for me personally, I had no lat development. Like,
Yeah.
I just knew how to use momentum from being a gymnast. I wasn't super strong through my lats.
Yeah.
So I had to spend a ton of time focusing on that and actually learning how to recruit them.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously I would use them on strict pull-ups, but then go to try to put it into something else and I couldn't even feel them.
Okay. Yeah. So it was only lat development for you, or were there other areas that you needed to
I
develop?
would assume more for her, like specifically for her. She was a gymnast. Most females come in and have a bracing problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that is something that you kind of have seen, though, bracing wise later on, correct? Is like having a bracing issue, or?
Yeah, I ended up with a ton of back pain, and I didn't know how to breathe correctly or brace correctly.
Yeah.
And that contributed to all of my back pain for the most
Okay.
part. I had like a hip imbalance as well, but
Yeah.
it
yeah.
came down to I had imbalances and I didn't know how to brace properly.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
would like hyperventilate.
Yeah.
I would try to brace and like use everything I could, which meant not being able to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then when I would need to breathe, there went the bracing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what, I guess, kind of diving into that a little bit, like what helped you figure those kind of things out? / it's still a work in progress.
Well, I was a dumb CrossFitter, so I had to go until I could not go anymore, and ended up finding a PT. But it was like I saw one physical therapist, and they basically worked with me for 3 months and said, "This is a waste of your time. We're not helping you." And I ended up with a chiropractor that said the same thing, and then finally found a PT that did dry needling, which was unheard of in our area.
Yeah.
And he was the first one to actually be able to take the time to figure out what was wrong with me. So it was a lot of PT.
Yeah.
But that's actually helped me a ton in the coaching world.
For sure.
I would say I'm a much better gymnastics coach and CrossFit coach because
Yeah.
of my body being broken.
Yeah, I know. That's like, I'm in the same boat with that. As like, I just accrued injuries throughout the course of my years. And then whenever I would go get body work done, I'd just be like, what are you doing right now? Like,
Yep.
what do you see? Like, what? Just ask a whole bunch of questions, and that like helps you develop a better understanding of like how the body moves and like what needs to be strengthened and what doesn't and stuff like that. So like what were some of the things that you guys were focusing on in PT?
Oh my gosh, the hardest thing. Well, I had to do bear crawls. My PT thought it was hilarious. He loved CrossFit, wanted to be in that world, but liked to make fun of it. So all the lingo, AMRAP, EMOM, all that. And he's like, all right, today's AMRAP. You're bear crawling for 8 minutes. Kind of like, who does this?
It's kind of fucked up. 8 minutes. Just
Yeah,
straight up
right.
there.
Oh yeah, I'll go forwards and backwards, and afterwards he's like, "Why are you sweating?" I'm like, "I'll let you go do the same thing, and we'll see what happens." But it was a lot of like I actually had to learn just how to breathe, which was crazy.
Yeah.
I could breathe through my diaphragm if I laid on my stomach, but not if I laid on my back. So I literally had part of my PT. I would be face down, breathing into the floor, and then once I could do that, he had me roll over, put a hand on my chest and stomach, and try to breathe into my hand, and I couldn't. So then he had to put like a sandbag across my stomach for me to have pressure so I could figure out how to breathe.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you contribute that to though?
I would assume it's just me being hypermobile. I don't think I feel all the same. I don't know. Everybody else, like if you're tight, you feel your muscle. I just don't because I'm not tight.
Okay.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
So I think there's like an activation thing there. And then I think because I was so hypermobile and was just trying to learn how to brace, it took away me knowing how to breathe naturally. Because obviously, I'm sure as a baby, I could breathe normally. I highly doubt I had that issue. Like,
You would hope so.
so I think it was just trained into me from like trying to learn how to brace.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you use one specific weight of a sandbag, or did you increase weight to learn how to brace with different
Just
resistance?
one weight, but once I could breathe with the sandbag on me, I had to start like trying to move my arms at the same time. And as soon as I had to start moving my arms, I couldn't breathe again.
Just like
It's
everything.
called sprinting,
Yeah, right? Yeah.
which I learned this past Friday. A lot of females have no idea how to sprint because they can't either move their arms or their legs or brace or breathe at all together.
Do you think that's something to do with the female physique, though?
No, I don't. I don't actually think so. I think it is.
Like contact sports?
I think yes. Majority of men. I called my dad because that's like I was like, how much did you coach females versus males? I always remembered training with all the high school kids when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. But I learned how to do it then.
Right.
When they were doing it.
Right.
And he's like, I actually coached a good amount, but they're all high school girls. So I was like, you weren't coaching like middle school girls or elementary school girls.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that girls aren't taught unless you were in track how to do that.
Yeah.
Until maybe they're in high school,
Yeah.
and even then, most of them still aren't.
Right. Right.
I know a lot. I mean, I know a lot of soccer players that have no idea how to run, and they're really good at soccer. They just weren't taught how to run properly.
Yeah.
So I one of the big questions I had for him, I was like, did you find it really hard for them to just for knee drive, like because of bracing? You can't activate correctly. You're not going to get your knee driven up high enough. Outside of everyone's arms are always all over the place. Like that's just normal. That's everybody. It is what it is. But I was just he's like, honestly, when you kind of mention it, like, yeah, like I think they had a problem bracing.
Yeah.
So therefore had poor hip action, had poor glute activation, and couldn't get their knee driven up well.
Yeah.
So I think it's just because of like at a young age, boys typically are playing football or they're playing baseball, even though like they still teach them how to at least run somewhat.
Well, and it's a rotate, you have to brace into your plant leg with a rotation. So I think most softball players you probably look at probably don't have a lot of bracing issues.
They shouldn't.
Yeah, from what I've seen at least, but yeah, that makes sense.
That's so I think it's a customary thing of like what sports you played growing up, and then like for most sports, boys are going into conditioning and being taught how to run.
Yeah.
Might be being taught how to run wrong. I don't know, but at least that base problem is solved for the most part.
Right. Right.
I think a big piece of it for a gymnast is most gymnasts hold their breath.
Yeah.
So like you just forget that you need to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's fine in the sport because we can hold our breath long enough. Like sprinting, I don't breathe at all. But my sprint was 80 feet down a vault runway.
Right,
so,
right.
I didn't need to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I've seen from like a lot of like you attract more gymnasts into the sport, and like working with you guys and working with your gym is like you've seen that, and even just some of the gymnasts that I've worked with outside of you guys is like their weakness is like jumping too, because they're like, when I jumped in my sport, I held my breath because I was about to fucking do a whole bunch of crazy ass twists and hope that I didn't land on my neck.
Well, that, and it's more rebounding versus jumping.
Right, right.
So I still want to rebound on everything I do. I don't really want to bend my legs and jump.
Yeah. And so it's been like training that out of people, especially like people who have been had that pattern built in them for like 30 years is like a really difficult task.
We've talked about that. Like, it's bizarre, the things that stick in gymnasts. Like, you can pick one out in a CrossFit gym in a heartbeat of how they jump onto equipment, what their hands do when they're just doing conditioning, like pointed toes, all these little pieces.
Yeah.
So ingrained into you, like, it never goes away.
Right. Yeah. They have like this very specific movement pattern. Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. So it was really kind of the breathing and bracing. And that started to clear up a lot of your back issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, apparently one of my hips was half as strong as the other. My PT actually made fun of me and told me that.
Is this Austin?
No.
Oh, okay. Different guy.
Austin was probably still in the military, actually.
Oh, really?
No, this was a different guy. Do you know who Gray Cook is? FMS screening?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was run out of his office. His main office, or startup office or whatever it is an hour from Lynchburg.
Oh,
so I was
okay.
driving out there
Oh,
for
wow.
PT.
Okay.
But he made fun of my hip discrepancy because he was like, that's normally a stroke victim. Like, I never see somebody young enough that, like, one hip literally works half as much as the other. But I was a really good faker, so, like, I could deadlift and nobody could tell.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that was probably as
But
big
your
of
back hurt deadlifting?
my back got to the point where if I bent over, I couldn't stand back up.
Yeah. No, see, not to disrespect coaches, but a good coach would know that immediately. If, like, my back just doesn't feel good when you're deadlifting and you look really good,
Yeah.
there's a major issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. No,
Yeah.
but I was the dumb CrossFitter. I didn't want to miss out, so I would go in and put like the J cups low, so I didn't have to pick up the bar and still do hang cleans.
Nice.
This was on the tail end of like CrossFit still just being like no pain, no gain.
Yep, and that's how we were coached. I mean, I was not encouraged to do that, but it was like I showed up and they were like, "Well, we're doing this," and I was like, "I'll just set the bar a little higher and do the same thing."
Yeah. And there was no concept back then to like, hey, you can like spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks and rehab your way out of this. It was just like, well, that's just you now, and you're gonna have to deal with it.
I will say my PT changed my mindset with all of that, which is when we opened our gym, I actually called him and told him, I'm like, we opened this and it's in thanks to you. I was like, I wouldn't still be in the sport if it weren't for you, because half of my physical therapy was me sitting on the table beside him getting lectured.
Yeah.
Because I was being dumb. And
Right.
I needed somebody to actually speak that truth into me.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a sport where we hurt all the time, so going into CrossFit, you hurt all the time. So it was like, this is life.
Hey, same. That's sweet. Okay, so tell us, like, you did CrossFit, you got your L1, you kind of coached some classes, then you ended up opening a gym literally in COVID, right?
Right before, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sick.
Really, really fun life decision there.
Yeah.
Don't go to a casino.
With COVID or wait?
No, just luck. That's terrible luck.
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that first year, we're like, of all ways we thought we could potentially lose the gym if something went wrong, like COVID was not on our radar at all.
Yeah, right.
Never thought we would be shut down for any reason whatsoever. Like,
Yeah. Okay, so that was, what month of 2020 did you guys open that?
we actually opened in 2019.
Oh, 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was like the tail end of 2019, right?
Well,
Okay.
no. It was spring of 2019. So we had like a little while to
okay. Like a year.
build up some members.
Yeah.
And luckily we have, I mean, CrossFit's known for phenomenal communities. So
Right.
We had a wonderful community that helped us stay afloat.
Yeah. Yep.
We actually, I think we only lost one member while we were shut down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they kept us going, but yeah, it was a fun year.
Yeah. Because I remember that year. That was the year that you came down in 2019, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And then I came up there for the first camp at your guys' gym in 2020, and that was like September of 2020. Is that right?
Probably.
I think. Yeah.
I think you normally came around like the fall time.
Yeah. What a wild time. But yeah, okay. So you said the PT helped you open that gym. So like, what? You guys are kind of like a standout in Lynchburg, in my opinion, in regards to just coaching philosophy, ability to teach movements, your eye for movements. Like, so what's kind of like your philosophy and your foundation around that?
Well, we have a good support system, which helps with that. So Austin, that you mentioned, is a PT in town, but he was also my training partner. So when we actually started working with you, we were competing together, and he actually comes in and helps our coaches fine-tune some things, because obviously like science is continuing to grow and find out more.
Right.
And so he's able to come in and work with our coaches and what we should be looking for.
Yeah.
To try and keep all of our members a little healthier. Because of that, we also focus a lot more on like weightlifting for them. I mean, everybody knows this. Like, you get your L1, you learn all the things in 24 hours is what it really boils down to.
Yeah.
And the amount of time you're in there. So, you learn the basics, but you can't like fine tune all the pieces. So he's able to help us with that, and we have a good coaching staff that continues to try and grow in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think if you can coach weightlifting well, it also helps with coaching gymnastics. You can see a lot more.
Yeah.
So when you take the time to learn like one aspect of the sport and what to look for, it kind of covers everything.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So weight, like looking at weightlifting obviously helps you out. What about like you coaching gymnastics has helped you become a better CrossFit coach and like vice versa? How does that carry over?
So when I first started coaching CrossFit, I kind of was struggling with how much of the particulars from gymnastics needed to be applied to CrossFit. Obviously, CrossFit is like...
When you say particulars, though, like what do you mean by that?
Like, I was going to say gymnastics is like an aesthetically pleasing sport.
Yeah.
Like, if you're supposed to look pretty while you're doing it,
Right.
that's half your score.
Yeah.
So, pointed toes. Like, does that
Okay.
actually have a reason that we do it, or is it just to not make you look ugly while you're doing gymnastics, right? Like,
Right.
But it actually helps you. If you point your toe, you're going to squeeze your leg a lot harder.
Yeah.
If you point your toe when you jump, you're going to push through the ground a lot harder. So, trying to figure out what was worth it to bring out of the gymnastics world into the CrossFit world and get like buy-in from people. Because, I mean, telling a bunch of grown men to point their toes when they're doing stuff, like, they don't exactly see the point behind it, but it does actually help.
Yeah.
I naturally did it because my mom made me take ballet as a kid.
Oh, so it's just like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so what do you think that is just like a natural human thing to do if you're taught it from a young age? But
Yeah.
you can like
I think it
lose
makes sense. I just think it makes you understand like streamlining your body.
Right, right.
Like, and then if you are more streamlined, you are going to be better braced. You're going to be more efficient in your entire movement.
So you think like maybe because you guys learned that at a young age, you're just like, this makes sense. I'm going to carry it over.
Yeah.
Well, it's also teaching you body control.
Yeah.
So, like in gymnastics, the kids sit on the end of the balance beam and they just straighten one leg and point their toe, put it down, the other one. Like, they literally, we call it leg tighteners. And
Okay.
It's just trying to get them to understand what muscles to squeeze to have a straight leg.
Okay.
If you drill that into them enough, like, hey, I want to have straight legs, I'm going to think about squeezing X, Y, and Z because
Yeah.
that's what worked before.
Okay. That makes sense. So what were some of the things that you like figured out? Well, first, sorry. Why is gymnastics not like CrossFit, and why do you not want to carry over everything from gymnastics to CrossFit?
Some of it's unnecessary. Like, you don't need to go that deep into the gymnastics world for CrossFit. So I know in the past, 2 years, a lot more flashy gymnastics has come out in the CrossFit world, and a lot
Yeah.
of people kind of threw a fit about it. But a pullover is literally the first skill you learn on bars.
Right.
Like, that's what we teach our 3-year-olds. Connecting pullovers, that's a higher level skill. Like, we call them baby giants, and CrossFit does a really jacked up version of it. But that is a little bit more of a higher skill. But like a simple pullover, that's literally how we teach our kids to get on the bar. And then a bar muscle up as a kip, that's the second way they learn to get on the bar. So I think in the gymnastics world, a lot of programming wants to go into like way too deep into gymnastics.
Yeah.
We don't need to be quite that technical. But at the same time, like, I had a girl that was coming into the first gym I coached at, and she was the only one that would show up on Wednesdays at 7. So it turned into just doing gymnastics because she was solo. I'm like, we'll do whatever you want. Like, you showed up.
Yeah.
And we would spend an hour doing different gymnastics drills, and some of them were a little above her level, but I do think it helped a ton with body awareness. So it's like figuring out which drills are too particular to gymnastics, like the actual world of gymnastics, and which ones can carry over into the CrossFit side.
Okay.
Because some drills are so technical that by the time you figure out the drill, you probably could have figured out the skill,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. But like is there a specific like movement that applies to? Like, do you get too technical with a pullover and you could have been like doing a pullover 3 weeks earlier or something?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it also depends on how strict and perfect you want it to be.
Yeah.
When I started CrossFit, I had a hard time with it because I thought everything was cheating. I was like, you're cheating on your pull-ups, you're cheating on your burpees. Like,
Yeah.
everything in my world was everything. It was supposed to be strict, and then I came into CrossFit, and you're kipping everything.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, if you have a regular gymnastics coach that doesn't have as much experience in CrossFit, they're going to focus purely on the strict side and not teaching the momentum side of things.
Okay.
And there's definitely a big carryover. You need to have one, or you need to have both, but if you focus solely on going super deep into the skills, I feel like you spend too much time on that side of things
Okay.
versus like being a better overall CrossFitter that can do gymnastics well.
Yeah. So like you lose out on the performance by trying to make it look too perfect. Okay. Do you think that there is value in trying to make it look perfect though? Like at a high level
Yes,
of the sport?
I do.
Okay.
I have the same theory with weightlifting. If you can make it 100% perfect while you're fresh, then hopefully under fatigue it's still 70 to 80% perfect.
Yeah.
Versus if it's 70 to 80% perfect when you're fresh, it's in the trash when you're fatigued. Like,
Yeah.
or you
Yeah.
just can't physically do it.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that working to perfection on certain things, but it's like find the basic pieces of that and make those perfect rather than going like super deep into it.
So like can you break that down a little bit more? What exactly do you mean by that? Like basic pieces versus like super deep?
If you look at a male gymnast that is teaching CrossFit movements on the rings right now, they're extremely technical. They have perfectly straight legs the entire time. Like, yes, that's great, but that's not required. Like, we in CrossFit don't need to have straight legs the entire time. I think teaching it with straight legs to teach people like where their hips are, where their knees are, and how to be explosive is important. But like once they get into the sport, you don't get extra points for making it pretty.
Okay.
So it's like learning some of the pieces and being really tight in those, but being willing to deviate from that once you start the whole skill. Or start putting it in a AMRAP or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. So like, is there a time and place for that technicality though? Like once somebody has the basics, like kind of like what you were saying before, like 100% perfect means 70 to 80% under fatigue. I almost look at it as getting into the technicality and trying to make it look like a gymnastics movement. I think actually isn't as efficient when you start getting into capacity based stuff. So do you think there is a time and place for that though? And like trying to make it look perfect like that, does that help capacity?
Yeah, I think it would because you are having to maintain better body positions. You're having to focus a lot more on like what your body's actually doing and not just whipping it around.
Okay.
And if you can hold those shapes, like that's time under tension sort of thing. Like if you're holding the shapes the entire time, when you start to let yourself relax and use a little bit more momentum, you're going to be able to crank out a few more reps.
Yeah. So when do you start to like, when does somebody get to the point where they're like, okay, you have all the basics down, you have the skill. When do you start looking at kind of like trying to refine that skill? Does that make sense? And like start to make it trend towards perfect.
So if I had somebody coming in for one-on-ones for ring muscle ups, I'll do that one because it's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
Like when they're just doing swings, we're going to try to make the swings as perfect as we can. Maybe there's a couple of other drills where actually I'll jump over to butterfly pull-ups because I have somebody that's coming in right now doing this.
Yeah.
He has one drill that is to help him open up his chest and find like a hollow when he's going through the motions. He likes to do everything completely strict. Like he had strict butterflies. They were not kipping butterflies.
Yeah.
He can do them, but it's not efficient. So he has one drill that is focusing literally just on like his core.
Okay.
To be able to arch and hollow well. And then I have him move over to another drill that's focusing on just what his leg is doing for the timing piece of it because his timing would get off on his butterflies. And then we have another piece that is working just on jumping to the bar. And then the fourth drill that he had was starting at the top of the rep and like pulling himself through to get into that big arch. So each one of those drills, hopefully we do to perfection so that when he puts the whole thing together, he doesn't have to think quite so much to be able to move through the positions.
Okay. So you're almost doing it like right away. Okay. Yeah.
I like teaching some of the basic drills before people even have the skill. Like, yes, you need to be strong enough to do butterfly pull-ups or ring muscle-ups or whatever it is, but if we're not teaching how to kip your dip out of ring muscle-up, if you wait until people can do, string 10 unbroken, they don't really want to take the time to learn how to kip it.
Yeah.
Versus if you teach that kipping in the beginning before they may even be strong enough to do the ring muscle up, when they have the ring muscle up, it comes naturally.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. So like what, I guess kind of caveating here, what do you feel, so like looking at some of the gymnastics program that you developed for us, there's a lot of, we have 3 different tracks for that. And in the development and the refinement, there's a lot of positional strength stuff. So can you kind of like talk a little bit more about what that is specifically? Because it looks a little bit different than actual strength work.
Are you just talking about like holds and all the
Yes,
shapes? Like all of that?
Yeah. And like, I think what a lot of people miss in their gymnastics program is the fact that like what you talked about in the butterfly chest to bar is like, oh, your client isn't strong with his chest open and in this arch position and the chest closed in the hollow position, and actually like looking at the shape that somebody is in and then working to refine and strengthen that. Does that kind of make sense?
So sport of gymnastics is very similar to the sport of CrossFit and just being able to hold body shapes. If you can't hold a shape on the ground, how can you expect to find it in the air, sort of thing? So learning how to hold a hollow and an arch laying on the ground, and then learning, like, can you hold it hanging? Can you then hold it swinging? Can you hold it moving? So a lot of gymnastics is literally just static holds. And then can you hold that same shape and rock back and forth? Or can you hold that same shape and move your arms? Kind of like how I was learning to breathe and move my arms. Like as soon as you add another component, people forget what they're doing. Or especially in gymnastics, everything. Like if you're upside down and you tell them to do something, they're going to do the opposite. I don't know what the brain does when people go upside down. But body positions are really hard to find when people are not in a comfortable position.
Yeah.
So like a gymnast is used to being upside down, but you put a normal person upside down and they have no idea what their leg is doing. Or I'm sure y'all have dealt with this. You try to teach somebody like toes to bar. And you're like, all right, have straighter legs and like the bottom swing, and they're kicking their butt because they literally cannot feel what their leg is doing.
Right.
So a lot of the strength for the gymnastics programming is simply holding shapes, or can you do like banded rows while you're in a hollow body hold? Like, can you find your strength from other body parts while you're just holding a static position with the rest of your body?
I think one like big piece that again, it keeps happening in CrossFit because it's so generalized, just doing all these things. And most people that come to CrossFit, the majority, right? There's a lot of the people that are higher level athletes typically come from other sports, but the majority coming into CrossFit weren't big athletes necessarily, right? They didn't play a ton of sports. And what that is leading to is that they didn't learn basics and fundamentals of a lot of these movements and just come in and be like, I want to do butterfly pull-ups or I want to do kipping pull-ups. Well, like, you didn't learn how to do basics of gymnastics. Just like if you go and hop on a basketball team, you are going to learn the fundamentals of how to shoot a basketball, not just go shoot a basketball. Right? How am I supposed to move? How do I jump and then shoot? How do I you do all of these little drills over and over and over and over for years. People hop into CrossFit and they don't do any of these basic drills. They just hop in. They learn how to, okay, I'm going to hop on the bar and I'm going to learn how to create those two shapes.
Yeah.
That hollow body to Superman position. And now that's it. Like, that's what we learned. That's how we're going to do it, right? And that's fine. Like, but that's how like CrossFit just like has to dumb it down to move on. But you're going to be limited in what you can do if you don't learn those basics and fundamentals, right? And like one thing that like I go through a lot of what you write because some of the stuff I actually use on Stella because she didn't learn any of it, right? And like one of the like just the developmental thing for like ring muscle ups drastically has helped her because she has no idea where her body is in space. She's
a good athlete, so she figures it out, but like doesn't actually know what she's doing.
Shout out Stella.
Right? Well, I was gonna say, like, you have talented athletes that can figure things out, but they don't know why they're doing it or how they're doing it.
She doesn't. Yeah. Well, she's the example of point your toe, nothing. Sick, right?
Sick.
Like, didn't learn spatial awareness.
Yeah.
So you have to. It's just thousands of hours of basics. So like understanding, like for me, I'll throw myself under the bus. Like I can handstand walk. I've always been able to handstand walk, but with football, they don't do anything overhead. So my positioning overhead was garbage. It's much better now, but still, like I'm overdeveloped anterior. So my handstand position is never going to be perfect. And just like you said, where the capacity of a lot of this stuff is, if you can't stack well or you're not in the exact right position so your muscles are moving and working together properly, well, I wouldn't bet on the person that's shaped like that. I'd bet on the person that's stacked better because they're not working as hard.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So going back, like for me, like I look at a lot of that stuff, I'm like, I should just do this stuff just to work on things and go back remedially and work on it as if I was a 6-year-old kid learning gymnastics because I'll do a lot better.
Right.
And I think a lot of people miss that point of like, oh, I want to just do, I need to get better at gymnastics and be able to do 12 bar muscle ups unbroken. I can only do 3. So you start doing all these pull up, chest to bar muscle up complexes. I'm like, well, why don't you just work on these positions?
Yeah.
And build your capacity from that, and you'll become stronger. And then so all these different tracks really are helping build these people a lot more. But they don't know they need it, and they for sure need it.
Yeah, right.
Learn how to do this stuff and understand it, and I'm guarantee your gymnastics will go through the roof.
Well, and I think that's one thing CrossFit has helped the gymnastics world grow, but because so many people can do gymnastics within CrossFit, it's like, why spend that much time working on it? We can do it. It's adequate. And then you watch high-level games competitors, and they're like, well, they they handstand walk into scorpions. Like, well, they can also breathe in really weird positions because they're freaks of athletes. Like, you're a normal person. Like, you should probably spend some time focusing on body position because it's going to make you a lot more efficient.
So I think that's a good caveat into like, let's start talking about our gymnastics program. Do you want to just kind of break down like what it is, how it works, the different ability levels that we put in there and stuff like that?
So 3 days a week we have programming. We go through a 6-week cycle. So for 6 weeks, we're going to focus on a minimum of 2 skills. But with those 3 days a week, sometimes it's going to be 3 skills. So it's either 3 skills or 2 plus like core work, or again, body position. I think one cycle we did body awareness, just like spatial awareness and where people are in relation to the ground, or like whether it's on the rig, on the floor. And then we have 3 different tracks. So our developmental track is for people that don't have the technique or the strength to do skills.
Yeah.
Refinement, you already have the skill, but it is not efficient. You are gassed if you do 1 ring muscle up or, a couple butterfly pull-ups, whatever it is. And then capacity is for people who are pretty efficient with it, but they just need to be able to do more reps in their metcons under fatigue.
Yeah. So could you give us like a breakdown of what a developmental might look like, or a refinement session might look like, and then like a capacity session?
So for handstand walking, for example, developmental is going to look a lot more like finding body shapes, body positions, and it's going to start on the ground, just trying to find a perfect handstand shape on the floor. And then strength building, so trying to hold a handstand, but if people aren't ready to be fully inverted, they might be piked on a box, one leg in the air on the box, because now they're adding in another body part and trying to figure out where it is. Some stepping up, so whether that is like shoulder taps while on the box or walking onto plates, something to get them picking up their hands and shifting their weight from hand to hand. So mainly for them, finding body position, figuring out what a handstand actually is, and then getting comfortable upside down while building some strength.
Yep. Okay. And we have videos that accompany all of that stuff, correct? Okay. Because I know that's a little, somebody might see one of these moves and be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What is this? How do I actually do this?
How often, like let's say handstand walking, for instance, how often do you plan on doing that type of track in a year?
I actually haven't gotten that far. That's in my plans for the next couple of weeks to figure out like the next few months of cycles, because it's something we've been talking about is how trendy of a skill do we want to teach? Like we have people that still want to learn pullovers, but are we actually going to see them a lot in the sport? So
probably not.
Probably not.
So figuring out which skills we actually want to touch on, because we did do a pullover cycle, but there's probably not a reason to put that in a lot more throughout the year.
Unless it becomes like a secondary thing of like we're working on 2 main, and then the pullover
like
becomes like a accessory fun type thing.
Because it is, you're still learning body awareness, even if you're doing a skill, you're not going to compete.
Right.
Still getting strength from it, but I haven't. That's something we all actually need to talk about. Figuring out that list of skills.
The reason I asked that is because would you like tell or suggest to someone, even like obviously eliminate the elite level, but anybody below that, I mean, even them, like I would still, when I look at that, I look at the developmental stuff. I'm like, I should actually just do that. It's because it's like accessory work. I don't have to, it's relearning everything. How much, like, where would you push certain people to doing that? Like, would you say, okay, basic CrossFit athletes that come into the gym, whether they want to be at quarterfinals, whatever, would you tell them, hey, like you should probably start developmental, do 1 cycle, and then it'll show up again, and then move on, even if you've got 15 ring muscle ups? Like, I mean, from my perspective as a coach, I would tell people, like, I would think, if you have never learned this, start, even if you're like, this is dumb, start at level 1, your developmental, and then when it shows up again in the year, or wherever it is, move on to level 2, and then again, level 3.
One thing, so I write very similar programming for my gym, and one thing I will tell people, they typically are doing 3 rounds. A lot of what I write for you guys is 3 rounds, and I'll tell my members, I'm like, why don't you try 1 round of the easier one? It's kind of an additional warm-up for you. If it goes well, move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So kind of using it as like a tester, like if you can't do it well and you can't do it without having to really apply yourself and think, you probably need to spend more time on that. But the other piece is, like, I've told people, if your goal is ring muscle ups and you're not incredibly close, you're probably not going to get it in, 4 weeks.
Right.
So maybe you spend some extra time, because you're also trying to figure out these drills the first couple weeks. So instead of just following it for 6 weeks, follow it a little bit longer. There is no rule that like you have to move on just because the cycle moved on. Like stay there and devote a little bit more time to it. But yeah, I definitely think people need to start with the developmental, whether they realize it or not. But trying to persuade people to do that.
Like walking in the gym and use a PVC pipe instead of grabbing 135 pounds to snatch it over your fucking head.
It is crazy because everybody wants to break down weightlifting, but nobody wants to break down gymnastics.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Break everything down. Break down running. Break down swimming. Break down everything that's there. That's the point of these. It's why there's coaches. It's professional sports. Like you don't just walk in and do these things perfectly. So learn how to do it. Right.
Unless you are like the 0.01% of the 1%, and you have just freak genetics that. But yeah, like. Literally 99.8% of people need to be sitting in some sort of developmental and refinement phase for at least 3 months of the year to help them out 9 months down the road when their season happens.
I still think it's 100%. And the reason I say that, okay, for instance, I walked in the door, never done a ring muscle up, didn't know shit about CrossFit, and someone's like, "Can you do a ring muscle up?" I'm like, "What the fuck is that?" I was like, "Just show me." They hopped up there. I was like, "Sure." Went up there, did 5 of them, and they were like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I can do anything when you show me how to do it." But like, that doesn't mean I shouldn't go learn how to do
right.
Yeah. So like, even the elites, like, go back, even if you took a gymnast, I'll literally use this, a gymnast, and they went to, unless they're like a level 10 gymnast, but even still, end up making the games. At some point in their off season, they should go back and just work on some developmental things because you do so many reps, you do them under fatigue, they fall apart. So your 100% turned to 70 to 80%. Well, that's not as efficient.
Right.
You did all these reps. You're training your body in a different way, even if you're not trying to, as you're tired. Off season, go back, just work on some developmental stuff, and make sure you're still moving the way you wanted if you were like to your standard. Right. It's this. I mean, it's the same thing for weightlifting. If you with CrossFit, you move a bar 1,000,000 times in a workout, people start banging it off their thighs. Their hips rise way too fast because you're more muscling it than anything. Well, that turns over into your 1 rep max lifts or super heavy lifts, and it gets a little worse.
Yeah.
And the next year it gets a little worse, and the next year it gets a little worse, and then you hurt your knee. Or your shoulder. Because you weren't moving the same way, and you're probably moving more weight than you were 3 years ago. So I would that's where I would just say, like, even so, take a step back and that's your accessory work. Just do it for the day.
Or do it for your warm up.
Or warm up.
Because now you're priming your body in all of those positions to hopefully be able to find them again.
For sure. Okay, sorry. Can you break down like refinement and development now too?
So refinement is for somebody that already has a skill. They're just trying to clean it up. So they might be able to do ring muscle ups whether it's singles or maybe they can, get 10, but can they kip the dip out of it? So obviously you had a big training crew yesterday, and that was one thing I mentioned to you. Like, you can tell the people that just came in strong or just spent time developing strength and not as much technique because they had that ring complex yesterday, ring muscle up, toe to ring muscle up and dip.
Yep, the semifinal one.
Yeah, and watching the very, very good athletes that were there, none of them had the timing to kip their dip. So they're wasting half a second every single complex, which, yes, I guess just on a normal training day, not a big deal, but, every little bit matters when you're competing. And it also, you're hanging out up there, time under tension for no reason. So they had strict handstand push-ups, and then they're hanging on top of the rings trying to find the timing to get out of their dip.
Yeah, that was actually something that I had talked. So we did another training session on Friday, and we had muscle ups in that one as well. And I was talking to one of the people that showed up to the Friday session. I'm like, and they just straight up, they'd get to the top of the ring and they were strong as shit, and they would just literally press out in like half a millisecond. And I was like, look, you want to develop the kip out of the dip because when you have things that are paired with horizontal pressing or just pressing in general, you're going to be fatigued, and you're going to need to be able to efficiently get out of that dip. And then Saturday, we had the strict handstand push-ups beforehand, and I'm like waiting, and like they're a very high-level athlete, and they get up and they do 1 ring complex, and their dip looks like they just struggled to get out of it, and they drop down. And I'm like, yeah, that's why.
Well, and even the ones that might have the capacity to do that, it still wastes time.
Yeah.
Because there was one yesterday, like strong as can be, I'm sure can dip all day long, even under fatigue, but she was wasting a second every couple complexes just trying to wait for the timing of it.
Yep.
You may as well use that momentum instead of trying to control it.
Right. Yep. And I think too there's a little bit of like a respiration aspect to some of the some
sure.
of that timing stuff.
Yeah.
And I think some people do tend to hang out in the dip just to kind of like bring their heart rate, respiration rates down a little bit. So that almost might be like thinking about this, that almost might be something we can actually start teaching too later on down the road with things, or like another kind of like opportunity to teach people things. Because if you bring your heart rate down for just pausing and like you get an extra 1 or 2 reps out of that set, like that's a pretty huge thing in the grand scheme of things.
I think it's just making sure you pause in a position where it's not as taxing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're fighting to breathe in that position too.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so like what exactly, like what drills would you be doing in like refinement for let's say like a butterfly chest to bar? Like what drills would you be doing for that?
Butterfly chest to bar. So most of the drills for kind of like, I'm just gonna say beginner and intermediate, I keep very similar.
Okay.
So one thing I really like for butterflies for refinement is working on getting that chest really open and going through that full range of motion. A lot of people will either do too big of a circle because they only use momentum, or they just kind of like touch their chest and drop. Like you see a lot of that like elbow crashing when people are learning them. So 2 drills I like, we do a lot of strict butterflies. So like that, like we call them baby butterflies. Staying in that bottom range of motion and you're not using any hip whatsoever, and it's showing that you have control to pull through those positions.
Okay.
So just trying to keep the shoulders healthy. And then another drill I really like, you do like a jumping pull-up. Start with your chin above the bar, and with no momentum, you pull yourself through and then kind of snap into a hollow.
Okay.
So you go through the front range of motion of that butterfly and then back to where you actually need to engage those lats a lot again. Because I think a lot of people just, once you find momentum, actually using your muscles kind of goes out the window for some.
Okay.
That makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, once you start swinging on a swing set, like the higher you go on one side, the higher you go on the other. So once you find that momentum, like you don't have to stay as tight. But if you learn how to stay tight, you're going to be able to get more reps.
And healthier, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, that's a hard thing to teach a lot of people, because I know, like, for instance, I mean, more to like bar muscle ups, the glide kit, but a lot of people do a glide kit but have no core tension. And then like they get really sloppy.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, well, they're easier this way. I'm like, yeah, to start, but you're gonna be limited. Okay, you can do 5. Can you get to 7?
Yeah.
Can you get to 8? No, you haven't been there for a year. That's why you got to learn how to actually have a little more core tension and move better. Whether you glide kip or not, isn't like people just think that they can take that momentum and just.
Yep.
I'll get up there.
Yeah. Okay, and then capacity, what does that look like?
Capacity is a lot more just, can you do it under fatigue? One of my favorites for like handstand walking, any of that, is doing arms only on assault bike, echo bike, whatever it is, and then go into as many strict handstand push-ups as you can. I always tell people if they're getting more than 10, they probably need to make it harder. So do deficit, whatever that looks like. But like I'll have that one at our gym. I have all of our athletes do that. We just scale what that looks like. So for capacity, they're going to be doing strict deficit, because these are higher level athletes that can already do the skills. But doing that one for anybody is great for building some strength, because like you don't realize what doing arms only on the bike does until you go to kick upside down and try to actually press. And like people that can normally knock out 15 strict handstand push-ups, like they're struggling to get 5 just because they did an all-out sprint.
Yeah.
So trying to get people to understand like how to grind through some of that while holding some really good shapes, because hopefully our warm-up has put them in good positions.
Yeah, and I did I've done a couple of them, and like one of the ones, it was like handstand shrugs on the box, and then you went into like a wall facing handstand hold. I don't know, but I mean, it's like, it is literally the fatigue that you're feeling 200, 300 feet into handstand walking, like in a 2-minute window, and you're like, the hell is going on right now?
But at the same time, like hopefully when you're doing that, it's putting you in positions where you're able to maintain it, like versus if you were just doing a 200-foot handstand walk, like what does that actually look like?
You're looking
by the time
like,
you get to that fatigue?
Right. Well, you have the wall there, so you can like kind of like brace a little bit better. The handstand shrugs were on the box, so like you're forcing your midline to be in a lot better positions with that one, and like you do have like, you are still building like the endurance of the shoulder in the walk, but you're still maintaining the rest of the body. It's like isolating the shoulders specifically. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So why should people sign up for this? Slash, why did you just listen to 45 minutes of a podcast?
That pretty much like what we just said. Pretty much should tell you, hey,
Yeah,
sign up for
yeah.
the damn program.
I guess, okay, better question would be, why do you feel like this program is different than a lot of the other programs out there?
So most CrossFitters feel like they suck at everything. I know, like, that's what I felt like when I joined the CrossFit world. It's like, oh, all these different things come out, new skills, new whatever, and no matter what, you feel like you're not doing well at 90% of them. And so, like, for me, it was more. Like, I would try and pull from every different program I could find because I'm like, well, I suck at this and this and this, and, like, I need to do more weightlifting. I need to do more gymnastics. If you buy a typical gymnastics program, it is going to be, I don't know, an hour a day,
Yeah.
I feel like, is most of them. And most people don't have that, like, especially if it's not somebody that is doing fitness for their life. Just a normal person that is trying to get in shape and do some competitions, or a higher level athlete, but, like, they work a normal job. They can't spend extra hours in the gym. All of our programming is done in 20 minutes. So it can be done in addition to whatever regular programming you're doing.
Yep.
Whether it's like working one-on-one with you guys or, doing the method, it's an extra 20 minutes that can be added in, and some of it can be added in as your warm-up. So if you have a lot of shoulder stuff going on, like, follow the handstand stuff that day and use it as your warm-up.
Yeah. And we actually, we sell the gymnastics program with the method. And I actually think that just throwing that in as your warm-up, if you buy that package, is like the best route to go. And it's only, we only do 3 days a week. So, like, it's not like we're doing every single day of the week trying to hammer you on, like, you're only doing gymnastics now. And we're not trying to waste one of your training sessions. Like, you're still getting in and doing CrossFit, and doing, like, the strength training, the aerobic capacity, and all the stuff that does also is required of you of the sport. So, like, can literally just be thrown in as your warm up for the day, and you just run that, and that's like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing for you. And now you're getting better at gymnastics on top of all the other
I
stuff.
could easily put in there, like, depending upon the cycle, if they're on that program, go to gymnastics program, use this as your warm up.
Yeah.
And then they don't even have to think about it. Go to that and then do it.
Yep. Well, and that guarantees at least a 15 to 20 minute warm up, which most people don't want to do anyway.
Yeah.
I know everybody skips the warm ups in there, whatever.
Yeah. 90% of people listening to this right now are like, warm up? Why? The fuck? No. Cool. Any other thoughts on that, or?
I mean, as it regards to, like, why to sign up for it, I would say, like, the drills, we try to simplify all of them.
Yeah.
I have learned how to simplify in a lot of ways because I have to teach our coaches how to teach gymnastics. I'm not the only person in the gym teaching this stuff, so
Right.
I've tried to make it so that all of our coaches feel confident in teaching it. And that's the same drills that I try to apply to this because most people are not going to have somebody watching them do this stuff.
Right.
But most stuff is simple enough, like set up your camera, you can watch it yourself and see if you're doing it correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've watched you now for years, right? And I've seen the quality of movement that comes out of your athletes after you're done working with them, and it's extremely high. And, like, I think, like you said, you dumb the drills down. It's not like some crazy shit that's being thrown on Instagram to get followers and stuff like that. And, like, even some of the other programs out there that maybe aren't like that or aren't advertising like that, their movement quality of individual coming out isn't, like, super high. It's like, hey, I'm here to just get you this because I know that it sells, and we're going to put you up on Instagram. Like, you are like, no, we are going to make sure that you look good at the end of this. And we're going to take more of a long-term approach to it. Kind of like what you said earlier is like, hey, maybe 6 weeks isn't enough for you. And, like, honestly, that is the truth for a lot of people, like, whether you want to hear that or not. And so you're going to come out of it moving better, which is automatically going to increase your capacity long-term down the road, rather than getting your one and being, like Griffin was saying, like, stuck at 5 glide tips for 3 years now, right? So I think that ultimately is another kind of, like, selling point and just, like, good concept that you've developed and put behind this program, if that makes sense.
I appreciate y'all's support in it. Actually feeling like I'm doing something right with it.
Yeah, you are, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I don't think you realize how, like, you come from a small town, and I just don't think you realize, like, how much value and how much, how much you know about coaching that you can bring to the table. And like you've spent 6 to 8 years just learning, and you have the gymnastics background, and like you go out and you kind of like, if you don't know something, you go and learn it.
Yeah.
And you're involved with a bunch of good like healers, which is crazy that Lynchburg is like a hot spot for healers, honestly. And like those people just help you understand so much about the body and the movement of the body that you can come back and apply it. And I think that's one thing that's like a sign of a really good coach, is somebody that is going and like learning on their own, but also going to healers to learn more than what they're required to teach, if that makes sense. But in the long run, it ends up helping them teach it better. So, yeah. I think we did want to get into talking a little bit about gymnastics, right, with the trials coming up.
They just started
Yeah.
When did they start? Yesterday?
Thursday.
Is Simone?
Yeah.
Is Simone killing it?
She looked pretty ticked off.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's Simone, so she's still doing better than majority of the world.
Ticked off. Well, okay. So is it ticked off that
Her
because she's doing
performance.
bad? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
They all looked really shaky. Like, it was kind of crazy to watch. There were so many injuries for the girls. Like, then if you were just watching the broadcast, first hour of TV, there's 3 that were basically wheeled off.
Really?
Yeah, like whether it's Achilles, knee, like whatever's going on.
People
like,
snap their Achilles?
I wouldn't say snap their Achilles, but they didn't give a diagnosis with what I was watching, but like they were not walking on their.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they just looked really, really shaky. So I don't
Really?
know. Yeah, even Simone looked shaky, which was kind of
Okay.
crazy to see because she's always rock solid.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Like, Jan and I were actually talking about that because I said, like, they're on the podium, which the podium shakes, so it makes gymnastics feel a little different when their equipment's shaking. But I was like, all of those athletes have trained on the podium tons and tons and tons. And, like, they were out there this week. One of them got injured this week just during, like, training. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I don't know. Gymnastics has become a healthier sport. Like, most of the coaches are taking better care of their athletes. The gymnasts actually look like athletes, not little frail things anymore. So
Yeah.
this is, it's a lot of injuries for what you normally see, I feel like.
Do you think there's anything to, because they did the Olympics 3 years ago, right? Technically. Do you think there's anything to that?
I wouldn't think so. I mean,
No.
if they're being smart, like, an extra year is not really that different. And if anything, like, the 4 that were on the, I think it's the 4 that were on the Olympic team last year, like, they're actually doing really, really well. And with some of the other people that were getting hurt, so.
Some of the younger. Do you think that they're trying to just rush themselves into trying to be as good as them or something?
I don't know,
Or just
'cause it was also-
trying to overreach or something?
I wondered how much of it is nerves. Like,
Okay.
I don't know what is going on with that. Like, I know one of the girls, like, she's a college gymnast too, so she's like, I've been out on the floor so many more times in the past however many years because I'm competing in college gymnastics. So
Yeah.
I don't think she had the same nerves that some of the others do, but like there were just some weird mistakes. Like on vault, hands were slipping, and like you don't see that a ton.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Do they have? Do they all have individually like different trainers?
Yeah.
Well, outside of like actual gymnastics coach, like weight, like strength and conditioning coaches.
I would assume by now that they're all doing that because that has been a huge difference in the gymnastics world. Like it used to be the lighter you are, the higher you fly, and now they're actually like, hey, if you put some muscle on, you do a lot better, and you stay in one piece.
Yeah.
Like even the gymnastics gym I coach at, we actually have our kids do strength training. So if our kids are doing it at our level, I imagine every single one of them are.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, if they had if they have a new coach or they've switched or anything along those lines. One big, like, I just accustomed that to like the NFL. You see a lot more. There's always injuries, but you've noticed in the past couple years, specifically the last 2, way more Achilles tears and way more Achilles tears.
Really?
Like,
Yeah.
unbelievable amount. Like,
Yeah. Quarterbacks should not be tearing their Achilles tendons.
no, but also like it's not even just them. There's a ton of people,
Right.
And they're saying it's the turf. You've been playing on turf,
Yeah.
And turf is actually they switched to turf originally because it was safer to from breaking bones and tearing some other things because of the impact. They put a special layer of foam underneath the turf. But everyone's like bitching about that. Well, they're going to go back to grass, and there's going to be even more injuries than there are now. But I started accustomed to that because everyone goes out and gets all these new trainers for them, and way more training now because people have to be different, especially right now. They're overloading joints and tendons and only doing certain ranges of motion like bodybuilders, but they're creating power output out of it.
Oh, okay.
There it goes. Tear it immediately. They're idiots. Not the players, but they're listening to these guys that are claiming. And so, like, not that that's the case, but I'm just wondering also, like, people, I don't know what their sleep, with the hotels or anything like, or where they're sleeping is.
It would be interesting to see, like, what changes they've gone through or, like, in their daily schedule. Like, what is different right now that are you actually recovering enough because you are stressed? And, like, when you're stressed, you need a little extra recovery.
Right.
But, again, that shouldn't be anything different from previous years when it comes to just recovery. So, like, you might be onto something with...
Yeah, I mean, also for, like, Paris for the Olympics, I already know some of the I don't know like if everyone's staying in the same exact spot, but I do know for the U.S. Weightlifting team, there's no AC.
Jeez.
Yeah, I was like,
Oh yeah. I remember this. Didn't like in early 2000s, like all the young people just like fled to the mountains because it was super hot. They left all the old people at home.
It's gonna be 80 fucking degrees in there. Like, no, I'm gonna die. Like,
Yeah.
dude, and
that's
also I'm gonna
crazy.
go. Then you're gonna also like, outside of that, you're gonna go miss lifts.
Yeah.
Your sleep's gonna be shit.
Yeah.
What is that? Icy Breeze? Is that the coolers?
Well, those are the coolers, but like 8 Sleep, the bed, they'll ship one. Buy it, they'll ship it to you.
Yeah.
They might sponsor you as an athlete.
Yeah.
But then there's other ones like the Bed Jet, stuff like that. Like those things are important. I don't know if like the elite gymnast should be using stuff like that if they aren't already.
Yeah. But I still feel like there's a lot of that stuff that's missed out at the high level because it's just like it's so like just regimented, and sometimes they're just so old school about shit.
Well, especially gymnastics.
Yeah.
I think that's why that sport took so long to change, like just from keeping people healthy.
Right.
Everybody was, well, this is how it's always worked.
Yeah.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
Like, cool. Well, you also are breaking all your kids at 16 years old.
Right.
Like, that's one really cool thing in the last couple sets of Olympics. Like, you've actually seen the age of the gymnast. It's much higher. Like,
Well,
when I was,
Simone is still out. Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy. She's going to be what, 28?
somewhere around there.
I don't
like
know.
I cannot remember all their ages, and I like pay attention to what I'm watching. But like when I was a kid, if you watch the Olympic team, they're like 15, 16.
Yeah.
Because by 18 they're going to be broken, and so that's actually really cool to see, and that should mean that their training is healthier for them now.
I also think they relied specifically on like you had to be a specific weight and like skinnier, and as you get older you get bigger, but if you get stronger then you can still do everything that you need to do. Right? Like take Simone, she's fucking a ball of muscle and can do 8 billion flips in one jump.
Right.
Like, it's disgusting, but like you know, like you don't, if she was frail and little she wouldn't be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. She's 27. So, which like is crazy for. Well, I guess 12 years ago, crazy. Maybe not as crazy now.
Not as crazy now because you were seeing, a lot of the girls this weekend are in their 20s. But again, when I was a gymnast, like if they made it to like 18, 19, like they were old.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like you're sending 16-year-olds to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Every other sport, they're adults.
Yeah.
And you had like children going.
Well, didn't we have one in the last Olympics that was in her 30s?
I know there was a Brazil lady that was
there's
in her 30s.
There's a lady from another country, and
Yeah.
there's actually she's. If it's the one, if we're thinking about the same one, like
probably.
she is not young, and I do not know how her body is doing.
Yeah. How old was like Carrie Stroke or Stroke or whatever? Stroke. Yeah.
Like when she was competing.
Yeah.
I think we're all teens because that's like.
Damn, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wheaties box at 17. That's crazy. So what? Okay, so like, do you know like where the shift started to happen? Was it just kind of like enough people were like chipping away at the old school thought process that eventually like it just kind of cracked the armor, or was there like one influential person that was like, yo, we have to do this? Or
I actually don't know. I've never looked into the research of that. I do know like there's a handful of really good PTs for gymnasts, and I think they have started to break through a lot. Just because like you work that hard, you want to stay in your sport.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have to retire from your sport at the beginning of high school. Like that
like that is mind blowing to me that like you're done at 18 when all other sports you're playing at least to 30 and now into your mid 30s because like people are actually taking recovery seriously. So
I would say like And my guess would be it's a lot more just research.
Okay.
PT's putting in the time and energy to figure out gymnasts, because that's another thing is everybody struggles with coaching the hypermobile athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could, without a doubt, when I was in PT, he would always have a student in there, different student, like every semester. And every time he'd let them run me through testing. And they're like, all right, we figured it out. And he's like, they would say whatever it was, like, I'm tight, something, whatever. Usually it was, I'm tight. He's like, she's hypermobile, figure it out again. Like, that's not the answer. But people struggle with that because being hypermobile is not normal. So therefore, like, most gymnasts are hypermobile. That's why they're good at their sport.
Right,
and
right.
I think PTs are actually figuring out how to treat them.
Okay. Yeah.
And then if they're working closely with their gymnastics coach, they're trying to figure out how to strength train them for their body types.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's more just kind of like multiple people have been kind of like chipping away at it type thing.
That would be my assumption, but again,
Yeah.
I haven't done the research to figure out where that actually started.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you would have heard of somebody that was like pretty influential in
Well,
that.
I think it's also removing the toxic people from the sport. Like, there's been a lot of that. Like, people actually coming
Like,
out and saying,
like certain doctors.
certain doctors, but also certain coaches. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of abusive coaches.
Yeah.
So the world of, like, we focus on mental health a lot more now. And
Yeah.
if you're focusing on that,
Well,
all this is coming to light of, like,
not-
who was actually...
It's not so much that you're like focusing on mental health. You're just not being like an abusive piece of shit.
Well, yes, but
Like-
I just mean, like, now that more people are focusing on mental health, they're realizing, like, it's not okay for your coach to scream at you all the time.
Right,
Like,
right.
that's not normal.
Yeah. I was, for those of you that don't know, like this is how aggressive gymnastics like used to be is like, I pulled up a video and this is, I think only like 3 or 4 years ago, but it's a video of literally this lady, like having all her like 3-year-old kids in stretches on like foot on a bench, back foot behind them, and literally walking behind them and pushing their hips further into the ground. You can just see the pain and agony on their
Yep.
face. And like, that's what old school gymnastics is,
Yep.
is like
Hell yeah.
literally breaking your joints.
Yep, like we would do over splits every single night at the end of practice, and we
Yeah.
would get pushed on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we'd push on each other's feet, trying to get our toe point better. Like, you're just
Yeah.
cranking on everything you can. Shoulders, like, no gymnast actually needs to stretch their shoulders that much. I shouldn't say no. There's always, like, you got a random tight one here and there.
Yeah.
Most gymnasts don't need to sit there and stretch their shoulders. They need, like, stability, not more mobility.
Right. Right.
But yeah, people are finally getting smarter with that.
Yeah. And then the coaching style was just like, you basically were yelled at because you weren't perfect, and like
Yep.
you're never gonna be perfect. So like you're just
Yep.
constantly getting yelled at all the time, and like seemed like there was no like semblance of like, hey, you're improving. Like this, look at this, and compared to 6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, that's the gym I coach at does a really good job of trying to keep the culture strong, and like we're focused on building good humans, not just good
Yeah.
gymnasts. Because in the end of the day, like they're not going to be gymnasts the rest of their life.
Right.
So
right.
like teaching them to be good athletes, but like also have like value themselves.
Yeah.
That's huge within the sport, because I think so many gymnasts, like, they would do whatever they were told, just they were being screamed at. So it's like, well, I'll do whatever to not get screamed at.
Yeah.
Even if they don't like it or if it hurts, whatever it is. I think that led to a lot of broken bodies
Totally.
and minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember what the number was, but my like big research project in college, went to school for psychology, and I did it on encouragement and discouragement with intrinsic and extrinsic motivated athletes. Mm-hmm. So for anybody that doesn't know what the fuck that just means people that are motivated inside versus getting encouraged, like, or motivated by external things,
Yeah.
whether it's money, awards, praise, whatever. And then obviously, you know what encouragement and discouragement means. And obviously, like, what you would expect is, like, most people like, oh, encouragement all day long. Yes, and I wish that like I could do like a test over like longevity of someone's athletic career, not just a snippet. But encouragement works the best overall. However, discouragement works really, really well on intrinsically motivated athletes. Basically saying like, you can't fucking do this shit. And you're gonna be like, fuck yeah, I can, bitch.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what? And it was drastic how different it was on how much more that worked on those intrinsically motivated athletes. But when you looked at like ratios, like they also do well with encouragement too. They don't do as well. They don't. But again, those are like hard spikes. Like over the longevity of their career, like 10 years later, that might not work anymore.
Right. Right.
But like, it's interesting to see like clearly overall the encouragement side, no matter what, if you're intrinsic or intrinsically motivated, will truly like keep everyone the longevity of being a better athlete.
Yeah.
yeah.
But that doesn't mean being soft either. I think people
Right.
No.
miss that with being like, well, you should just be encouraging. Like, yes, but like you can be.
You also have to hit them
Critical.
with truths
I was
about
there's
like,
tough love.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
But we have a lot of gymnasts that came from a different gym that did not have the same mindset as us in the gymnastics world. And we've had to like build so much confidence in those kids and trust in them because they were screamed at. And like they also weren't spotted, so sometimes they were dropped. And so just building this trust within the coach, but then getting them to believe in themselves because we compare them just in their personalities within the gym to our kids that have been with us forever. Kids that have been with us forever, they'll crash on a drill or crash on a skill, they'll get up and do it again. Like, they'll just shake it off and be like, it's fine. Like, I failed, but it's okay. The kids that came from the really unhealthy environment where they weren't encouraged, they fell once, they want to quit. They fell once and they're like, well, I'm a piece of crap. Like, I can't do this. There's
Yeah.
no point. Whereas our kids that, like, were in the healthy environment the whole time, they're like, oh, like, what did I do wrong? Let me fix it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal. And they just know they can get back up.
yeah, yeah. There's like a much more of a growth mindset built into your guys' culture.
Yeah.
I also think having trust in the coach allows you to coach differently.
Yeah.
The athletes that don't trust their coach, if it's not encouraging, they're not going to fucking listen.
Yeah.
They'll just shut down.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. That's some interesting stuff, though, Griff. It'd be interesting also to see kind of like intrinsic versus extrinsic over the course of somebody's career, because I think that motivation does shift over time,
For sure.
and so like seeing that and then kind of like mapping that to like longevity as well, and like trying to like dial in when can you be more sorry, you said encouragement and discouragement. Can you be more discouraging earlier in some like from like
what
an
age
18
group?
to 24?
So that's what
timeframe?
my testing was between that range. Where you're
Okay.
a little bit more developed. You've already been coached for years.
Yeah.
Then obviously they were all athletes.
Right.
And like it just at that point you're more likely to get a better or a more distinguished answer.
Yeah.
Because there's not as many variables. They're already an established athlete. Your mentality is established. When you're younger, you're still molding and still learning. And discouragement could really shut people down. But
It's
like
crazy. Yeah.
But I like look at it for me, and I was always pushed harder in the discouragement category, even when I was young. But if like people that did that to me, you did that to somebody else, they would have never played a sport again.
Right.
They would have just gone and worked a desk job the rest of their
Yeah.
life. Like that was it. You know?
Yeah, right.
But like I think a lot of people get worried about that when you're younger, because if you're not tough enough, you'll shut down in other ways too, emotionally, whatever. But I think it'd be an interesting study, but they just have to add even more variables to it and how to test something a little bit differently when you're younger, because the discouragement and encouragement needs to probably change to more of, I don't know, maybe more of a way of being like, I guess, critical or giving constructive criticism as discouragement, like, hey, it's not good enough, but we can do better.
Yeah.
And balancing in that. I mean, it's hard, but you have to divide and create a line of that. And I think that as a younger age would probably work better for most athletes that want to be high level.
Yeah.
Except if you're just coaching, the mom and pop kids.
Yeah,
Then you just encourage them.
right.
But
Well, and with that, like, we have kids that'll come in, they're naturally athletic and they don't have to try very hard. Versus our kids that they don't have the same level of athleticism, but they're going to try, like, they're going to work their butts off for it. When the more talented kids get to a higher level and things start being hard, that's when they start shutting down, because they never had to try that hard. Like, they never heard as much of the, like, constructive criticism, we'll say. They didn't get as much of that because they were doing it right. By accident, because their bodies are just made that way.
Right.
But as soon as it gets tough, like, they start shutting down because they've never had to fight through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
soft.
Soft 6-year-olds.
Hey, y'all don't even know what my 6-year-old life was like.
I also think too that like you don't need to be the one that offers the discouragement as a coach. I think that can come from outside sources.
It can.
Yeah.
And like you just need to be the one that is helping guide them to like still be critical and like still give them like, hey, that was good, but it could be better.
Yeah.
Like, and then like
Just make a fake Instagram account.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you hear about it all the time, like man, in the Nuggets. So like using basketball as a reference, like the Nuggets played the Timberwolves this year, and they went down 0-2 against the Wolves to start, and like everybody in the national media was like, yeah, the Wolves are going to sweep, yada yada yada. And so the head coach, I can't remember his name, he's a great coach. He basically just started clipping clips of all the national media being like, the Nuggets don't have it anymore, they're going to get swept, etc. And they played that in their clubhouse 24/7, and they went and came back and won 3 straight against the Wolves. And it's like there is a time and place for it. But all of that still was coming from an outside source. The coach just brought it to everybody's
Fake
attention.
Instagram account.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, but yeah, like that sometimes, like, it gives you the push to be great versus good.
Yeah.
Right. And like that, it separates who the elite people are. There is a line where you can't go too far.
Yeah.
But like that was the time. That was perfect. Like they all needed to be pushed.
Yeah. Dude, there's some sick things like that in coaching. Like,
It's a tool though. It is a tool.
Yeah.
And you're also not doing that to a 4-year-old.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Just playing in his room, like going to sleep.
But I mean, there's also times and place where you need to have the highlight reel of the great things that you did, throughout the course of the season. So like, coaching is tough. Like again, he kind of like brought that to their attention, and like creating a highlight reel brings it to your attention. It's like finding the things that need to be brought to the attention of the athletes at the time that they need to be brought to their attention is like this crazy art form, and that's kind of like where the fun in coaching is as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a balance, but you have to learn how to do that.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, dude, it takes years. Like, I didn't feel like I was really like fully capable of doing that until like 10 years into my coaching experience.
Mm-hmm. I always struggled. So we have our regular gymnastics team, and we call it's our rec gymnastics team.
Mm-hmm.
That one's supposed to be more fun and lighthearted.
Yeah.
And my previous gym I was at, he'd come to me after one meet, and he's like, all right, you got to let the kids have more fun. I'm like, okay, got it. Like, means parents are probably complaining because this is the rec team, supposed to be a little more fun. Next competition comes around, they don't do as well. He's like, all right, you got to be serious with them. I'm like, got it. The next one comes around, you got to let them have more fun. And I was like trying to figure out that balance with them, because like to make a sport fun, those kids don't always want to hear all those corrections, especially with a rec team. Like they're not putting in the same time and energy into it. So trying to find that balance with different types of athletes, different levels of athletes.
Yeah.
I think even with that type of class, they have to earn the fun.
Yeah.
And if they don't do things well enough or listen enough, they don't get to have the fun time. Mm-hmm. And parents are going to be pissed about that, but they'll still get the fun because they'll decide, all right, well, I'm going to do better. And then 2, they'll also do well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can't just hand anybody anything.
Right.
You can't but again, it doesn't have to be like they had to be perfect.
Yeah.
They just
put effort.
They had to put effort, and they needed to pay attention and show up and do the job, even though it's for fun. You still need to learn that, because that's also a life lesson. You have a job at some point in your life. Do your fucking shit.
Your job.
Yeah. So it can be, your job can also be fun, but it's not fun when you suck.
Yeah.
Nothing's fun when you suck.
It's awful.
But it's also explaining to them that there are going to be days that you suck. Like everybody have good days and bad days.
Right.
But it's the effort that you put in, no matter what the day looks like.
Yeah. And then just let the outcome be what it is. But like, you can always walk away from the competition floor having had fun if you gave 100% effort.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to do that. I don't want to handle the
like
class.
Yeah,
Sorry.
fuck that.
Look, I don't
That's such like I remember. I'm not trying to knock people that
No, it's
do
hard.
this, but like people that are like, I want to compete for fun, and it's like, winning and trying is fun. Like, is that what you mean?
I definitely struggle with that. Like right now, I only compete once a year.
Right.
And like previously, it was like, well, if I'm not on the podium, like, what's the point in doing it?
Yeah.
And so now I'm like trying to change my mindset.
I know.
Like I'm literally just competing so that I have something to motivate myself to work out for.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why am I pushing that hard in the gym?
Right.
But then when I get there, if I don't place well, I'm like, well, that was not fun.
Yeah.
Why did I just do that?
Yeah. Also, I think that's where, like, when we were talking about like the motivation changes and shifts.
Yeah.
as you get older, you have more responsibilities.
Yeah.
So then you're not doing only gymnastics. You're not only doing your sport. So now you have to have a better understanding of what your effort can be.
Yeah.
And then it
right.
really needs to become you're motivated by being your best self.
Yeah.
I think when you're young, you don't know what that means.
Well, and your best self literally changes like every 3 days.
Right. So like I think like when you're younger, you can have a more concrete like, hey, like these are our goals, and we need to be the best to that point.
Yeah.
To give them steps. But once you get older, you're at this. You've climbed all these stairs, and you're like, I don't. Now there's like 50 different staircases, and I don't know which way to go because I have so many things to do.
Right.
Just be your best self on whatever staircase you're on.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's like becomes your better motivation.
Totally. Yeah.
But then that also goes back to being intrinsically motivated.
Right. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you have helped me see that a little bit more and like help me to like understand and like come up with that though. Cause like we do the hybrid method with you and like, you know, like we've like backed you off to 3 days a week, which like if you're trying to be great at something, like you wouldn't necessarily do, but it's like your and my understanding is like we need to make sure that you are there for your athletes at your gym. And like if you're burnt out and not competing well and injured all the time, you're not going to be there for them. And you're not going to be able to be like, hey, let's go do this competition and like show like kind of lead by example. And like I think that's kind of like helped me see that there is a different route to competing and like there is different like kind of meanings behind it than just being like I want to fucking win all the time.
Yep, and that's the last competition I did. It was with one girl who's done a handful of competitions. The other one is 2 of them are newer to the sport. Between the 3 of them, they've probably done like, I don't know, mostly up to 6 competitions total, I will say, is like the most they've done. Whereas I used to compete like 4 times a year. And so I was like, all right, I'm literally just competing to like, I had to go into the mindset, I am competing to have fun. My fun is going to be helping them grow on the competition floor.
Yeah.
Not expecting to podium, but like literally, are we giving it our best? Or do we have a good strategy? Am I being a good team leader for them?
Right.
And that's been a big shift in my mindset. Cause
Totally.
that's not how I used to be with it.
Yeah.
But like you said, like I have to find that because my body cannot handle doing high level competitive CrossFit right now. Like it will fall apart. I don't know if it'll ever be able to do it again. Like I'm getting old. I am old.
Steroids.
Yeah. No, I think it's been good to see, and just kind of like good, like it's a good learning experience for me too. And how long have we been doing that for? Like almost 2 years now, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And like we've kept you healthy and like we've adjusted where we needed to adjust and like we've definitely kind of reshaped some of the goals and reframed some of the goals. So, yeah.
But still hitting some PRs. So
yeah,
despite the old age and training 3 days a week.
Yeah. Well, it's back up to 4 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another lesson that some CrossFitters could learn.
All CrossFitters.
Yeah.
I always try to tell our athletes, I'm like, I did all the dumb crap. Like, please learn from me and don't do it yourself.
I think the hardest part is that most in CrossFit, because it's all revolved around fitness, you do fitness for other sports. So like you worked out to go practice. So you did more, but you were doing practice, right? So like find something else to do.
Yeah.
Gymnastics program.
There's your more.
Yeah,
there's your more. Get better at gymnastics. Here you go.
Or take out a PVC pipe and practice snatch pulls.
Yeah, right. I mean, legitimately do that to do more. Because, like, I mean, shit, I want to go play basketball or lacrosse or soccer or something instead all the time.
Right.
It's way more fun, but, you know.
Yeah.
That too.
I used to play basketball all the time when I first started the sport, and I wish I'd been able to continue doing that because honestly, I think it helped out a lot. Like just the lateral movement, like playing a sport, understanding your body, and then like,
CrossFit tells you to play new sports all the time, so.
And then you don't.
And then you don't.
And then you look like this all the time.
Yeah. No, CrossFit's done a lot for me, but that's the biggest negative. Like, I am I'm still athletic. Fuck you, Dave and Buster's. You all got smoked last night. Like I just feel more restricted because you
Oh,
move in
yeah.
these same patterns all the
Sagittal
time.
plane, that's it.
And like sports, you have to learn how to bend, twist, rotate,
Yeah.
and flip in the air,
Yeah.
do all these things
Yeah.
and react.
Yeah.
Every play.
Like to if you want a good example, I can't remember his name, but Patrick Mahomes' strength and conditioning coach is actually great at that.
Yes.
Great.
Well,
at it.
because the way he plays, the way Pat plays, you have to be strong in those positions.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad trained me is similar to that.
Yeah.
Also, my mom, she was a ballet dancer, but also
Yeah.
Pilates, like a master's Pilates instructor, and she's
Right.
like, you need to get really strong in these weird positions.
Yeah.
Because like I was also a really small kid, and I would get folded in piles. Mm-hmm. And you'd see me in like a back bend or a full split, and I'm just like rotated and twisted, and my mom would freak out up in the stands every time. And I just popped the fuck back up. And they're like, what the fuck is, how did he not tear everything in his body?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And it's just like learning to be strong in all these weird places and positions. You know, like you need to train like that, but also keeps yourself healthier.
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah, yeah. So, cool. I don't know how long that was, but
Hour and 22 minutes, 23
sweet.
minutes.
That's probably good. Probably a good wrap up spot.
Yeah.
Well, Christa, how do people find your gym?
We are in Lynchburg, Virginia.
What's the Instagram account?
We are Align Athletics. I think it's _ CrossFit Thrive.
Okay.
I don't know. Search Align Athletics. There are two of us though. There is an Align Athletics in another state. So ours has.
Yeah, well,
CrossFit
fuck
Thrive
them.
attached.
And what's your personal?
Shoot, what is my personal? Christa Alexandra. I don't remember if I have a little underscore or not.
Because you post some of the gymnastic stuff to your personal too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So our gym account is Align Athletics _ CrossFit Thrive.
Okay.
And then I am Christa Alexandra _
Okay. Cool.
We
And
should
then
put those in the details.
yeah, we can.
I mean, I can also put it on the video, but we
Yeah,
should.
yeah. And then obviously, if you go to our Wad Up storefront, you can purchase the gymnastics program, and we are possibly looking at going back and pulling some of the old ones and selling those as well for a little bit cheaper price points. So you guys can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. So be on the lookout for that as well. Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.